So it was in 2018, mid-November. I was driving home from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I was between Ann Arbor and Monroe, northwest of town. And I ended up taking a side road that I hadn't really taken before. And driving down this side road, things got very dark. There were these farmhouses that usually had the driveway lights and everything on them. There were no lights. Everything was very dark, but I went by this line of trees, and then there was a house, and then a tree beside the house. 50 feet away from me, there was something standing next to the tree. It was between 7 and 8 feet tall, had no neck whatsoever. The arms hung down lower than like humans would, and the thing had blazing red eyes. And I've been in law enforcement my entire career, and I don't scare easy, but it was a pretty frightening experience.
Michigan is a land of legends. From the otherworldly beauty of the northern Great Lakes to the concrete and steel of metropolitan Detroit and everywhere in between, the unexpected lurks. Stories tell of the Nain Rouge of Detroit, a little red man said to forecast bad luck. The infamous Michigan Dogman, an upright canine that's been sighted for centuries. The witchy wolves of Omer Plains, burial guardians of Chippewa folklore that strike at motorized vehicles. These and many more suggest that both the upper and lower peninsulas of Michigan host mysteries as old as the forests and freshwater lakes themselves. In 1965, the greater Detroit area had no lack of social tension and political scandal, but there was also cause for optimism. Automobile production was at an all-time high, with 9.3 million passenger cars manufactured. The Motown record company was at its peak of popularity, dominating the radio with classics like My Girl, Stop in the Name of Love, and I Can't Help Myself. Even the Red Wings Hockey Club finished the NHL season with the league's best record. But 41 miles south of the Motor City, events were about to unfold that would plunge quiet Monroe County into chaos and intrigue. Monroe, as it turned out, held mysteries of its own that decided to manifest themselves in the late 20th century.
The Monroe Monster case from 1965, it wasn't here at the time. Like I said, I grew up here, and it just kind of became folklore for around here. Everybody kind of knows of it. Everybody's kind of heard of it. Actually just found out today, one of my friends, it was actually her cousin who was the one who actually had the episode happen. So I've heard of other people saying they've seen the creature every now and then. Pops up. It likes to pop up. It seems like a lot of times I'm hearing about it around railroad tracks. We always hear Sasquatch like to use the railroad tracks to move. So I've heard it pop up in different areas and different railroad tracks around the area. And so as I've gotten older, it's just been one of those things I've wanted to know more about. So I came out to kind of keep looking for it.
The Monroe that you see today, if you look at it, like say on a satellite, has some of the features that would have been there in 1965, but there's a heck of a lot more urban sprawl. And so the city of Monroe itself is bigger, but what you would see, you'd still see the expressway there, which is I-75, and you would see most of the roads, but what would have been farmland and what would have been forested area and forests along the Raisin River and things like that is now, instead of just being wooded, is a protected parks.
If you don't live in Monroe, Monroe's very interesting. You have on the outskirts farming communities. Monroe is a little bit more urbanized. It falls right between Detroit and Toledo. So you have kind of the flavor of both of those cities mixed in with Monroe. And the auto industry is prevalent here as well.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a very old town. Used to be known as Frenchtown. So it was one of the original settlements here in Michigan. And so a lot of old buildings, a lot of north, south, east, and west type neighborhoods. And what's so crazy, I was just there. I think those things could have come right down Plum Creek to the location. They might have been nesting in the area the whole year, or came down the railroad tracks. There's multiple avenues. But yeah, Monroe is a very old town. Just a lot of history here going back, to the 1800s at least. If you head east of town, it's all marshland, because basically you've got the town here, all marshland here, and river outlets that pour into Lake Erie. And I believe Lake Erie is the key, because that brings the bigger fish. These Bigfoot are hungry. The bigger the fish, the better. They love fish. They're probably sick of deer from the wintertime, and they're moving in, maybe migrating in from the west to get some of those fish.
Monroe County sits exactly on the southeast corner of Michigan, lower Michigan. On the opposite side, you have Cass County and Van Buren County on the southwest corner of Michigan. In the center of both Monroe County and Cass County, Van Buren County, you have Hillsdale County. Hillsdale County has long been known as a paranormal center spot, an epicenter, if I may.
You hear bits and pieces, but when you're a kid, your parents don't want you scared to death, so they don't tell you stuff like that, Bits and pieces here and there, mainly as I got a little older, like mid-teens, is when I started to really hear about it. I'm like, what? And I grew up on the river, literally in my backyard. I thought, well, I would be seeing stuff if they were coming out of there, if they're doing that.
From my understanding, there were multiple accounts, maybe a dozen plus accounts from 1963 to 1965. To me, the most prominent was Mrs. George Owens and her daughter, Christy Van Ecker, I believe. And either they hit the Bigfoot with their car or came close to it, which caused the Bigfoot to reach into the car and just kind of grab Christine and shake her a little bit, which resulted in a black eye.
So from what I've been able to figure out, on August 13th of 1965, there was a mother and daughter in a vehicle, and they were driving down this road, and the road itself was called Mental Road. They were going down the road, and they were going slower than normal because it's a curvy road, and they were worried about one of their tires was apparently bald, and so they didn't want to hit any sharp rocks or anything and blow a tire. So her name was Christine Van Acker. She was 17 years old, and she was driving, and the window was down, and she was going very slow around a corner. They got to a point near a corner where they saw a large, dark figure in the headlights. And when they saw that, she began to slow down to the point where whatever this, we'll just say, creature was, and was large enough, was able to reach into the car, and she wasn't at a complete stop at that point, and grabbed her hair. At that point, she tried to stop again and stalled the vehicle. And that allowed this creature to continue to have a hold of the hair, and then apparently bang the young woman's head against the side of the car, giving her a black eye.
Apparently, there was another girl in another part of the county with a very similar situation in the southern part of the county, in a place called Temperance, Michigan. Same thing. It was a beast that encountered the car, leaped on the car, smashed the windshield of the car, and allegedly scratched the girl on the arm. And with these things going on, there was at least 16 of these incidences that were happening. The state police were aware of it. The county sheriff were aware of it. One of these troopers was quoted as saying they tried to keep the thing secret, but it backfired on them.
My name is Jody Figanis. I'm the son of Christine Van Acker, who was the victim of the attack of the Monroe Monster in 1965 when she was 17. The truth is, and the entire story is, earlier in that day, during a daytime time, my mom and her 3 friends are driving around in her I think it's a 64 Chevy, right? It's 1965. This is a rural area, more rural than citywide. And they're out in Carlton area, which is just right next to Monroe here. And they stop on the side of the road so one of the friends can go pee. All right, so they're waiting for the friend in the woods, right? They're smoking cigarettes, they're talking about boys, right? And they're just laughing and giggling. They smell the smell that they're just like, oh my God. And actually the only name I actually had gotten out of my mom through the years of the story is a girl named Betty. So they smell this smell, and then all of a sudden she's shrieking. She's, terrorized, running toward, doesn't even have her underwear up and stuff like that. Like literally full of mud and just run and scared and freaking out. Jumps in the car. My mom doesn't know, she just floors it. They take off. So they had the smell. The girl said she bent down to go pee and she smelled the smell too. Didn't know what it was and heard like a deep growling, like scared. It just scared her. She looked up and there it was. There was a gigantic Bigfoot, you know what I mean? And so she's terrorized, runs to the car, takes off, okay? They drive around town, they talk about it, whatever. Mom just takes everybody home, okay? Everybody goes home. My mom goes to her father's house and picks up my grandmother, her mom, Ruth, who was in the car and part of the attack story. So all these years, I always thought maybe they were out looking for it. You know what I mean? Maybe they're, just peeping around trying to see what's going on. But my mom just told me not too long ago, no, that wasn't what they were doing. She just picked up her mom and they were just on their way home. And they're just driving home down that country road. And my mom sees something coming out of the ditch area. It's more nighttime now, and she's not even sure what it is. She's not sure what's going on. So she just slows down and goes to look. And what happened is the Bigfoot rushed up to the road and went to like smack the car. You know what I mean? Is what she hit the windshield right here. What happened was that thing's hand came in, and in the 60s, they all had these beehive hairstyles and hairspray and all that. The hand got caught in her hair, okay? And that's how she got the black eye in the photo and things like that, because she hit her head against the side of went this back against the side of the door, and then she reached up to, like, what is going, you know what I mean, trying to, in her panic, and she said she couldn't get it loose. But later, after the occurrence, this like drives me crazy, she had all kinds of quill marks in her hand. Like all these, they weren't to the bleeding point, but she said they were there for hours and hours. You know what I mean? When you poke something really, really bad. And they weren't really to the bleeding part, but they were all very red and just like tons of them on her hand. You know what I mean? From trying to get this things. So she goes unconscious, it knocks her out, takes its hand out, obviously runs away and does whatever. My grandma, fight or flight. She flight, you know what I mean? She took off. What we've got out of my grandma when I was little, she's dead now, was she smelled the smell. She was terribly frightened. You know what I mean? That's her kid, and anybody goes after your kid, you'd think you'd want to help or whatever, but she said that this was the most terrifying thing, you know what I mean? Like, just from the overwhelm of the smell and the shock and the things, she ran, right? It was just a darkness, a giant dark figure, and then that's what I mean. I wish she could be hypnotized or something, because she, you know, the smell, she heard it hit the front windshield, which is called the A pillar, you know, where the windshield is held together on each side. That's an A pillar. This is the B pillar. It hit there, you know, and then her head's slamming against the thing because it went in and got caught in her hair. But no, she didn't. I think, you know, think about your peripheral. This thing is grabbing you, trying to put myself in my mom's position. I think she did see something, you know what I mean? But either way, just hearing it and the smell, and then having her hand touch its top of its hand, paw, whatever, and getting those injuries, those porcupine kind of injuries. She doesn't explain that she got like a great look, like at its face or its teeth, or, you know, a lot of stories you hear that, like it had a broken tooth and it was snarling and they were all yellow and it smelled like crap and, you know, all that stuff. But so no, not really. And in the first encounter, like I said, they smelled it. The Betty saw it and ran and was scared of it and whatever. And, you know, my mom punched it. She never said anything about anybody looking back and actually seeing that one or whatever. You know what I mean? So I mean, if it was, that's the part, if it was just the first story, I would be like more skeptical that it could be some kind of hoax by kids or just drunk adults or whatever. But it's that second part, especially the hand and her injuries and the smell and the trauma. And my grandma, she was a tough old broad, dude. Like, I've never seen like a dude, like, there was no, like, you weren't gonna beat my grandma, you know what I mean? Like, she was really funny and goofy and stuff, and we loved her. But she would mess you up if you messed with her, you know what I mean? Like, I know she would. She didn't like put her hands on us, saying like that. There was no abusive, nothing like that. But I'm just saying, I even heard stories about, you know, back in the 40s or whatever, some guy trying to put his hands on her and she would, you know, do something. So even imagining that, like, I couldn't imagine. I would have to be, I don't even know how scared I'd have to be to run from something that was attacking my kid. You know what I mean? Especially all the things that I've heard and went through. I'm probably not gonna, I'm gonna fight against it anyway, even though I'm 5 foot tall, whatever, I'll bite its ankles, whatever I gotta do. You know what I mean? Now, but back then, before you have all this information and your fight or flight kicks in, there's just a lot of things about it that, like I said, all these other details that come out about it, and the cops came and the authority figures and all these things came by. They really scared the crap out of my mom and her family. And her dad, Al, worked for the Monroe newspaper. For like 30 years or something, right? He had kind of an in to how the media works, you know what I mean, things like that. And she was 17 at the time too, so he just kind of shut it down completely. You know, with the authorities, and my mom even said the sheriff, the cops, and there were people in suits. There were visits days after that from people in suits, and I don't know if Men in Black type thing. I'm just saying government people, something, media people, all that, just constantly harassing her. So, and I always wondered, well, what about these other girls, right? I wonder what, you know, but I think my mom knows that I dig, and I don't know if she just won't tell me, you know what I mean? I got that name Betty out a few years ago when I was like, Mom, you got to go through this story again. You got to tell me everything before you pass away or anything, you know what I mean? And that's when I found out about this first part of the first encounter of the night, you know what I mean? Where this thing happened. She's just been traumatized this whole time. Even now when I'm like, Mom, you know, let's tell the kids about it, you know what I mean? And she'll go in a little bit, but then she just retracts. You know, it's crazy to me when you watch how society acts towards people who say something happened that's unbelievable. Like, I'm a joker, I'm a comedian, I get the jokes, I get all the funny stuff. And I even get like people and their dad saying that this hoax happened and it was a hoax and this and that. And every single time, I've worked in factories and all along, everywhere in this whole town, you know what I mean? All these different small jobs that I could get. And every job I've been to just about has somebody that has an uncle that supposedly did some kind of hoax, you know what I mean, around here. So whenever I find that, I'm like, okay, my mom got a black eye from this, so let's find your dad. You know, let's just talk to him and see what he has to say. Cause that, you know what I mean? But then when I start bringing up these other things, the first encounter, the fact that she had the hoax in her hand and stuff like that, and then, oh no, you know what I mean? This was, my uncle used the plastic one. Like there's outside of town here, it's a all rundown, like it's got plastic dinosaurs and plastic monkeys, and it's just a little kid's thing. It was big maybe in the early 80s, late 70s, even before that, I suppose, you know. And people used to steal those things and set them in the road and stuff like that. But they're plastic, they're immovable. They don't stink, they don't whatever. And even back then, if you go back and all the people that hoax and do all these hoaxes, using like skunk smell from the hunting store, that stuff didn't even cross their mind until the 80s or 90s, you know what I mean? Like that's never even a part of the hoax stories that people tell, you know what I mean? Or like all these other things that I don't really confront the people, but I'm like, hey, I need to talk to your dad. Like if he's for real, I need to know, was this in 65? Oh no, this was in 72. Oh no, this was, you know, it never correlates to my mom's actual thing that happened. You know, it's always, my uncle said this around the drinking beer around the fire. You know, of course, a lot of these people are gonna, you know, they all make things up. You know what I mean? Just to be a part of it, I guess.
One of the cool things about anytime something fun and exciting happens in a town is everyone gets involved. And that happened in Monroe in 1965. The police were inundated with calls. That's going to happen. People are going to get freaked out. They're going to be scared. The dog's going to bark. They're going to wonder what it is. And but also, according to police records, they actually had to patrol Mental Road because it just became congested with people who wanted to see the creature. So there definitely was an impact because people were excited about it.
It's within a 5-mile range for sure, because Carlton is tiny, right? And it has some rural roads leading off here and there. In the satellite image, when I was kind of doing a little research of it, yeah, there might be 4 or 5 fields between there at the longest, you know what I mean? Which might be 5 miles at the most, you know? But I'm not totally sure about that yet. I'll find out. I'll try to dig a little more. It's not like I can, like I said, that's what people don't really understand. It's not like I can just say, like yesterday I talked to my mom, hey mom, they're doing an interview. No. Well, I'm going to go and I'm going to relay some information and okay, all right, you know, that's okay. All right. You sure, mom? No, I don't want to do it. You know what I mean? I don't. And that's what I'm saying. When something happens to somebody and it's so traumatic, I can't just bring it up and be like, okay, mom, go into detail.
While the historical saga of the Monroe Monster is, in its own right, a fascinating and harrowing tale, it does not stand alone. The 1965 incident became a matter of public record, inviting scrutiny and skepticism from many corners. But many others kept their encounters a more private occurrence, unsettled by the apparent reality of an aggressive Sasquatch in southeast Michigan.
I can see where, like, if you don't know somebody and you never met them, and, you know, for instance, the latest sighting, right? The wife saw me in the comments, contacted me, and I was talking back and forth to her. It turns out her husband, I went to school with this guy. I know him personally, you know? And he's the type of guy, and I can totally understand why she's like, look, I'll talk to you about it, whatever, but he doesn't want to talk to anybody either. I get it, but he's the type of guy, he's not gonna take someone calling him a liar, you know what I mean? He's probably more of the swingy type, you know what I mean? Not that that's bad or anything, I'm just saying. I know this guy, and I know if he had to deal with some of the things that my mom had to deal with, people saying that he's not going to take that, you know, he's going to get angry, you know, not going to become violent or anything, you know, purposely, but he's going to be angry about it, especially they're dealing with his 12-year-old son. who saw this thing and is terrified and won't even go to windows, won't, nothing. Like, this kid is terrified. He's 12 years old. You know what I mean? I could only imagine. Like, I said to tell him as many encouraging things as I could, everything that I could, just to be like, hey, look, this is your and your dad's secret. You know what I mean? Like, you're gonna have a few friends that might actually believe what you saw or what what happened.
Today, residents of Monroe County continue to have run-ins with something resembling the thing encountered by Christine Van Acker in 1965. Description after description mentions features similar to Van Acker's, a 7-foot height estimate, an approximate weight of 400 pounds, the figure covered in long, coarse black hair. However, it's not only the physical details that mirror the famous case, it's also the behavior of the beast, interpreted by many as unpredictable, hostile, and even chaotic.
I think that the coolest sighting that I recall that I personally investigated was in 1980. And the reason that I keyed in on this one was the guy was relatively close to me in age, and he was going out with a 22, and he was squirrel hunting. And I'm like, oh my goodness, at that time, I might have been doing exactly the same thing, the hillbilly that I am, on the west side of the state though. And he'd walked into a wooded area that he had hunted for years. Like, he started out going out with like a BB gun when he was younger, and then he was trapping. And so this is an area that he was extremely familiar with. He knew all of the local farmers and went out there to shoot squirrel. And he was walking through the woods and turned a corner and came across a large, slightly reddish creature that looked kind of like an ape. But when it stood upright, it was on 2 legs, and it didn't directly look at him. And he was scared to directly look at it. His rifle was slung on his back. I'm not exactly sure how far away they were from each other, but they just stopped and just looked at each other.
The most recent sighting, which I've dubbed the Plum Creek sighting, was on May 18th, reported by Ed and his son, who are local to the area, and he actually grew up very, very close to the area of the sighting and still has family that lives right there across the tracks from the location. But he and his son were bow fishing in Plum Creek at the time, and they had checked out one area. They moved to another area farther down the creek. They started in one area of the creek, bow fishing, and then they moved down to another area of the creek for about a half an hour, and then moved back to the original area. When they had moved down to the other area of the creek is where they encountered what they said was a tornado ripping through the place. It sounded like a tornado. Trees were shaking violently. Something back away from them in the marsh that they couldn't see. They thought they scared up a whole bunch of deer that were going to take off, like a small herd of deer. But that wasn't the case. So it seemed odd to them. So they continued just doing what they were doing. They didn't have any reason, to think that something horrible was going to happen to them or something. But so they moved back down to their original area. He set his bow down on the tree limb, which I can show you, and was checking his phone, and then he and his son had seen something drop out of the tree onto the ground next to them. Now, the dog that was with them at the time alerted to this, and the dog took off after whatever this was. And Ed believes that this thing originally charged at him, but then the dog scared it away. And The dog actually chased it down the path, down the trail along Plum Creek, and chased the thing up and over a railroad embankment. And after it went up and over the railroad embankment, they lost sight of it. They think it either went into the woods across the railroad embankment or circled back into the area south of them. Both Ed and his son said that this thing took off really fast, a lot faster than a normal human could run. Okay, and then they didn't see its legs as it went up the embankment. And he said that as it went up the embankment, he could see that the back had been tapered down and it had buttocks, and it really resembled something more like a gorilla than a bear or anything else.
So we go over there, and I met the victim. I call him victim, the witness, the man and his child, the man in particular, because he was the father. I found him to be very poised. I picture myself in many different situations where I had to interview people, question them. I see this man as very legitimate. He's seen what he's seen, and he's telling you, you know, I'm an ex-Marine. I don't want to be bothered with people. I heard or I read or I'm familiar with what they did to those two women, you know, years ago. Don't play with me like that. I'm just telling you, we've seen what we did.
Well, the first thing I thought I saw, you know, and you got to scratch your head, what am I seeing here? I was on my way to work. I worked at the hospital. I was a registered CAT scan and x-ray technologist for almost 30 years. So I was on my way to work, and I crossed the river, as I do my whole life, and I look, as I do, because I do that, and there's this, what I thought was an odd log. And I slowed way down. It's on an island in the river. And I stopped my car and I looked at it. Something told me just to stop. Of course, nobody else around you, of course. And I'm watching this log, and I watched it stand up. I'm like, that's no log. What is that? And I don't know if it was a Bigfoot or a dogman.
If you go up to the Waterloo State Game Area, multiple sightings up there, and it all has to do with the river raisin. Even the history going back to the War of 1812, where there were supposed sightings by soldiers, American soldiers, where the Bigfoot were climbing up over the fort walls and stealing the supplies and then retreating. So there's a rich history, and like I always say, the population of Bigfoot is way more than we ever expected, especially here in Michigan.
Then approximately 4 years ago, I was with my daughter-in-law and my granddaughter taking my daughter-in-law to work. So we were on the corner of Heiss and Telegraph, which is North County. 3:30 in the afternoon, beautiful sunny day, and there was a maroon pickup coming at us. What the hell was that? It ran in front of us between a Shetland pony and a horse, not as beefy as like a cow or a steer would be. No snout, no tail, ran on all fours, and it had fur it was like a chocolate brown, and it was matted, kind of like what a bison would look like. If in the pictures you see the bison's fur, just like that, same color and everything. I'm like, what? And that was that? I knew it wasn't a bear. We don't have bears down here for one. And distinctive, it ran fast. The back end was higher than the front. That I can tell you. And it ran. I mean, it was an animal. It was running, and it was running fast.
From my standpoint, a lot of the Sasquatch reports and the sightings and stuff, they seem to hover around known Native American Indian or Native Indian significant points and stuff, and this was one of them here in this county right here. And at Plum Creek, when you talk to people that want to talk about the Met's report, you know, May 28th, that's significant too, because some of this that happened here ended up over there too, in that Plum Creek area. People died over there. People were killed there, hunted down and killed there. The incident that Matt reported and posted May 28th, 2025, just so happens to be, and I'm talking about 6 Kentucky and Winchester Streets in that area over there, just so happens to be in the general location of another monster report 50 years earlier.
There's been other encounters, like in Luna Pier, there was a report of a lady who was northbound on 75 at Luna Pier, and she had a flat tire. And she was changing the flat tire, and something came out of the tall weeds on the side of the road at her in the car changing the flat tire. And apparently she hopped in the car and drove off without the wheel on her car. She was so scared. And in addition to that, there was also another sighting in Luna Pier as well. I think that one dates back to the 80s. So there's been activity in the area.
So this here is about the last spot. I was walking up here, and I had my bow. And I sat my bow up here and let it rest, and I got my phone out and my earbuds out, and that's when I was switching over to put the police scanner in my ear because I heard them going off, and I was just wondering what was happening. And at that point in time, my dog was right about back here, and I'm over here, and I had my phone in my hand, and all of a sudden I heard a thud, boom, right here. And this is where something dropped, and then I look over and I can see like the silhouette out of my peripheral vision. It landed like this, and then the dog just started going crazy, barking and screaming. And I pulled my peripheral vision up, and the animal went like this, and the dog was right behind it. And they go right up here, up this cut. If you look up here, and they chased them all the way up over the train tracks. And then I called back for the dog. I didn't want the dog to get lost or hurt or whatever.
So basically, I was about right over here in this area, and I was looking over the water. I hear a car going off in the distance. I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a car. It sounds like it got turbos on its way. It's sucking air, and you can hear it. And then he was like, no, it's a bike. And then the police siren started going off like crazy. So he sets his bow down right there. We were just walking through here. He sets his bow down. I stand right here looking over the water for fish because we were bow fishing. He goes right there. He gets his earbuds out of his pocket. He got the thing ready to pull up. And then the minute he put one of those earbuds in, boom, the thing hits about right here in this area. I was standing right here, and I was looking this way, over like this. I got it in my peripheral vision. The dog was right here. It shoots it like, it runs over just a little bit, and then it shoots off, and then the dog chases it off. And then we didn't know what happened. It was stunning. But I look over, and I see it looks like big as a bear, but it's shaped like a gorilla. I didn't know what it was. I was thinking all the possibilities. Nothing was clicking. Dog chased it off, 20 feet, shoots up the tracks at an angle, but it was running at my dad. It wasn't running at the dog. You only saw my dad. It ran at him. And the dog shoots off after it, chases it. That's all I saw. It was moving so fast you couldn't see the legs at all.
So this is it right here. It came up the hill and went over the train tracks, and the dog followed. And once they got out of sight, I called for the dog back, just in case. I didn't know what was going to happen. But yeah, it was the craziest thing. When I seen it, it was almost all black, and it was complete hair. Like you could see the outline of its back, where it would taper down, and then you could see like its hips and its buttocks, and it was just hair all over it, and the hair was like matty. It looked almost like a dread, kinda. Like it matched bark to. It looked just like bark, but it was hair. But the way it laid, it would make them look invisible in the forest.
I was right over there, and the thing shoots up, runs up here. You couldn't see nothing. It was just a straight blur. You could see the legs were moving way too fast. Can't see them at all. The dog right over there chased the thing up here, over the tracks. I don't know how far they got over here, but they went in somewhere about that area, right over there. And then we call the dog back. Dog comes back, and We didn't know what it was.
Couldn't even see its legs. It was going so fast. The dog was behind it, so it might have blocked some of it, and it was all happening so fast. But it was more of a, it blended in so much that you had to see like an outline of something moving. It's hard to explain it. And strategizing, I believe it 100%. There's no reason we shouldn't be able to strategize after waiting till I put my bow down to then kind of confront me. So, yep.
Just not seeing anything come out here. It's strange. Okay. And what we've done, we went back here and everything. We look at in terms of like game trails and where animals have been moving in and out, and back in through here, and especially over on the other side where the trees were shook. You have actual game trails that went pretty far back. The trails were easy to go through, and those are the areas back over there where the bedding was.
Okay.
The bedding area. So, okay, right here, you came down here. You don't see any other tracks out here. This is the area right here where he sat down his bow.
Okay.
Okay, and there was apparently sirens, and he wanted to know, so he got out his cell phone to pull up his app, his police scanner app and everything. And just then, and the boy was standing over here, something had, and the boy actually is over there on the other side, and whatever it was, this is the Y in the tree. Right up here is where they believe this thing could have been, as being the most likely spot. That jumped down from there, right here.
Okay.
Basically right here. And the boy was on the other side. Ed Jr. was on the other side of the tree there when it happened. So then the dog, this whatever it was, charged after him, and then the dog came and chased whatever it was in this direction. And so we got the brush here where they wouldn't have been able to see whatever's legs, which was very interesting to me. The dog went up one side and this thing went up the other. So whatever it was went up this other side. It's I think, as Chad had said, the soil's very tightly packed. But on this other side here where the dog went up, and through here is where we found the dog footprints. So we could reinforce that part of the story as well. And again, you know, this brush right in between reasonably explains why they couldn't see the creature, whatever it was, its legs.
There's a lot of stuff that was going on and still continues to go on. And it's very interesting.
Because if you deal with Plum Creek, where the recent sighting was, and then you also deal with the River Raisin, there is a history of Bigfoot sightings going all the way up. If you follow the River Raisin up kind of north and west, it goes all the way up into Chelsea and Pinckney. And that is the epicenter of just a ton of Bigfoot families, clans, whatever you want to call them. And I think they migrate down to Lake Erie, and the main purpose to do that is the fish.
The second thing was I'm also in a ghost hunting group, and we were out in Petersburg area, which is western Monroe County, and myself and another teammate, there was about 4 or 5 of us outside. We were doing shifts. One team went in to investigate, we were outside. We watched this thing stand up against a pole barn and then squat. It was like, it almost like disappeared, like it dropped and was gone. Chad said, "Did you see that?" I said, "I thought I did." And then we could hear the dogs, because this is out in the country, so it was quite a distance for neighbors, if you will. And then we watched it stand back up. I'm like, well, what the hell is that? And you don't know, because I see ghosts. So, and there are some bad things that kind of look like those. They kind of resemble what Bigfoots would look like.
Eyewitness encounters of the Monroe Monster present a discernible narrative. A human being is surprised to perceive an ape-like hominoid in the Michigan countryside.
It definitely had the shorter legs, and from the sketch, the shorter legs and the longer arms. I believe it was darker in color, very dark. And like I said before, what really sold me on it was how she described the quills. So if you're gonna fake, and we know that some, people tried to come in and hoax with costumes and all that. If you're gonna try to fake it, especially back then in '65. So this is prior to the Patterson-Gimlin, right? 67 was a Patterson-Gimlin. So yeah, you're not gonna have the wherewithal or the thought process to make an elaborate costume like that. I think that was a legitimate sighting just from the quills, the hairs being quill-like and pricking her and poking her every time it grabbed her and, kind of knocked her around a bit.
While that was going on, there was I believe, a push to distract people. Look here, don't look over there. So there was a monster, an effigy, a statue that disappeared in the Out County area that made the news. Forget about the 1965 Monroe Monster. Here we got a theft of a statue from a campground. And it's an ugly statue too. Everybody look at this thing, and it looks silly. It really is. It's a 6-foot statue. So what happens is that monster gets stolen. It's stolen property. The sheriff goes out to look over at the stuff, and somehow that stolen property shows up on somebody's property that's close to the Fixed Road, Mental Road area. The stolen property monster appears over there, close to the scene. The law enforcement goes out there, they put the 6-foot monster in the back of the police car, and they parade it through the city. And it just so happens that there's local media on hand to take pictures of it.
Yeah, one particular guy even got a whole costume and was out walking around in the neighborhoods, trying to act as if, hey, I'm what you saw, and just having fun. And that happens all the time. Whether people are trying to discredit Bigfoot sightings or make fun of it. But yeah, so it just kind of almost became like a fun holiday event, so to speak.
The incident from 1965 is the only one I've ever heard of where it's actually reached out to anybody. Most of the time when people have said they've seen it, it's just been, they're out hunting, because this is a big hunting area. People come out here to do hunting, fishing, and stuff like that. And a lot of times it's people who are going back and forth from their hunting area or fishing section that they see it. It's I don't think anybody's ever been, locking their doors, afraid of it type deal, because it doesn't pop up that much, but it does pop up in the area.
You see, you're in Michigan. All right, we are limited to black bear. And the recent sighting I have only came down to Memphis, all right? Not this far south. So to me, you cross off bear. Cougar, that's gonna be farther north, and that's a different color. There's nothing else that fits it.
It doesn't surprise me that we see another incident over here when 50 years earlier, they were reported in that area too. And I don't know how the authorities handled that case, but I know making mockery and ridiculing the women the way they did in 1965, it was horrible. Who would see that any other way? That's horrible. I wouldn't want my daughter, my wife to be talked to and talked about like that. And for what? They seen something, and they were human enough to come out and tell people, hey, there's something not right here. And for that reason, they get pasted like that in the media, and to me, that's not right. It's not right at all. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of interesting points to this that need to be brought out. And the fact of the matter was, with the polygraph was very, very new to law enforcement. in 1965. In fact, I think it only came out in 1920s, the early 1920s. It hasn't been around a long time, but you take two women that apparently seen a Sasquatch in 1965. That was 1965. That's not the 21st century. That's not a time where we were used to worldwide information, computers, and stuff like that. What are the chances, what are the mathematical chances of these women, these two women, reaching out with computers they don't have and bringing this information in, drawing it together, and describing the creature so perfectly in detail? What are the chances that that would happen?
For it to happen now in 2025, you know, over here, and you know, and all the people saying, brown bear, could be a bear. I've lived here 47 years. I've never once heard of a bear anywhere near this freaking county, ever in my whole life. Deer jump all around all the time. Every morning I see deer taking the kids to school down Newport Road every morning, and they jump in front and everything else and whatever. Never once have I heard anything about a bear. Now, I've seen people say supposedly, but that's no different than a Bigfoot sighting at this point. You saw a bear? Did you get your phone out? Oh, you had 12 seconds, you didn't get your phone out in time? Oh, you used a potato to film it? Oh, you know what I mean? Like, what do you people want? And today with AI, if you had a picture, if you had a video of it coming right out of the water and walking, nobody would believe it anyway. You know what I mean? It's AI, you know?
Sightings of strange creatures in Monroe County did not end with Christine Van Acker's dramatic encounter, and neither did the impact on eyewitnesses. The long-term effects of the monster's inexplicable appearances would linger, both in the community and in the lives of those with face-to-face experiences. Newspaper accounts put Van Acker's bruises on full public display. Others would bear lasting internal scars in a way that was more private, but no less painful.
This is the deception that we've been treated, you know, since we were small. This is what authority wanted us to know. Nothing. So when the big lie comes out, it's shocking, and it should make people angry. You've been lied to. These things are real. They are out there. They roam the place. Are they good? Are they bad? Well, that's up to you and you to decide. I'll give you the information. I'll show it to you. But it's up to you to decide what they are and who they are.
I haven't seen anything where people have said they were a part of any hoax of the recent encounter. But like I said, over the years, like ever since I was a kid, this has been on my mind. You know what I mean? Ever since I was old enough to remember. And you know, it comes up in school, any school I'm in. I'm like, my mom's the one that was tagged by Monroe Monster. You know what I mean? I learned to shut up about that later because you get it constantly, you know? Everything you could think of, from people teasing her. And she was, I believe she was starting to be a hairdresser at the time. And hairdressers talk, you know how it does. You get your haircut, they want to know all about your kids, about everything. Every haircut, you know, it's got, you know, it just becomes, it's bringing up the trauma constantly. You know, it might be fun to talk about for a second, but then something hits. You know, you can see it in her eyes, like something hits, like she remembers that smell, that hand, that thing. You know, all these people, they see one. Even this latest guy, he saw it how many ever feet away, you know, and it scared him, and how many other ones dropped out of the trees or whatever happened.
Yeah, I would say there's less persecution now of the eyewitnesses, because back then they basically had to disappear, had to hide themselves, because, you know, some people are vicious, so they were called liars, you know, fakers, made fun of, not taken seriously, and that's a shame. That's in general the big picture of what, going back to the Patterson-Gimlin, all the way up to now. It's so sad that so many people have been persecuted and made fun of or ostracized because of their sightings, when these things do exist.
When you see those big bold lines that say liar on it, what would you think if you've seen that? It's not right. It's not right to do that. It's not right to torment somebody like that. I've learned over the years, I've done this for 12 years, looked at these things. And not 1 year went by that I doubted that they existed.
And like I said, my mom, she really thinks that it hit the car. You know, it really wasn't trying to get to her. It was just like, I mean, even when you like use the most of your imagination and try to imagine you're like this creature or whatever, and like we're aliens, like basically. And you know, what do we do when we see a spaceship? I would run up and touch it. You know what I mean? Definitely.
83 counties of the state, every county of the state reports Bigfoot sightings. And Monroe is one of them. To this date, Monroe has, according to me, according to what I see, 23 sightings in accountings. And 3 of these things, we're talking about the 1965 Monroe Monster, right there at Mental Road, Fix Road, Netta Road, where we passed. We went down that road. Within a 5-mile circumference, Dave and I, we took another report close to Telegraph within a 5-mile area from that area that we were at earlier this morning. Again, going back to what I said earlier, these things return to places that they're most familiar with, for sure.
The reason why my mom won't talk about this, and she won't even come on camera, she don't, because Monster Quest has contacted, all these people have contacted, they've offered her money, all kinds of things, you know what I mean? People who go through something like this, if you're close to them and you know them, you really understand the traumatic event that they really went through. I mean, I'm not saying it's connected to aliens or nothing like that, but when I talk to her, like, if you ever seen all that stuff on Travis Walton, like that and the Betty and Barney Hill, as far as that, those two are 100% to me. I think I just believe the people, you know what I mean? I'm not there, I can't say 100%, but in my belief, 100% those people I think are telling the truth. And the way, you know, I wish my mom would have did more things like Travis did and did talks and it became less traumatic for her. You know what I mean? It's even traumatic now to this day, and she's 77.
I get tons of emails, tons of texts, tons of Facebook messages because everyone says, have you seen this? Because everyone knows that I'm interested in the Bigfoot phenomena. And they usually preface it with, I know you probably already know about this, but, and then they'll tell me about it. And it's fascinating. But it hit this area and it got over all of the newspapers. It hit the news. It was interesting. It of course hit social media. And it comes at a time when Bigfoot is exciting. Bigfoot is interesting. People know about Bigfoot. If you drive in your car, you're gonna see a Bigfoot sticker on a car, and it may not be mine. I mean, they're there because it's a part of Americana. It's a part of our history. It's part of our culture. It's part of our folklore. And so when it becomes more real, it's fascinating and it's interesting, and people are intrigued by it.
For those other people that actually go through this stuff, you know what I mean? Whether it's some other phenomenon or whatever it is, you know what I mean? They go through this stuff, and then you got society joking, and you know, they probably lose friends and jobs and all these things. And that really shouldn't happen, you know what I mean? My mom, she should have had a avenue like Travis Walton to be able to talk about it, to get a therapist, to really go into the, you know, even hypnotizing or whatever, go through that hypnosis, and we might find out a lot more, you know what I mean? There might have been some more back there in her peripheral that you don't know, your subconscious knows, you know, all these things. But 1965 to now, it would have came out by now. What about these 3 other girls? Why haven't they came out? You know what I mean? How traumatized were they? How suppressed are they by all this authority and society and stuff like that, not to come out, not to whatever. I mean, believe me, I'm gonna try, even still, over the next few years to get whatever names I can out of my mom, because it's not even about that. I wanna go talk to these people, you know what I mean? I wanna go talk to them. You know, my mom was traumatized by this. If I could help her in any way whatsoever, you know, or anyone else, I would appreciate it, you know what I mean? So.
Dateline, August 17th, 1965. The News Palladium, Benton Harbor, Michigan. Christine Van Acker, 17, sports a black left eye after an encounter with what was described as a huge hairy monster who jumped on the side of her car in Monroe, Michigan, and beat her head against the door until she fainted. Almost exactly halfway through the volatile 1960s, at a time when the American dream still seemed like an expectation in the shadow of Michigan's own manufacturing metropolis, Van Acker's story was picked up by the media, and it ran, and ran again, and ran with reports of monster hunters descending on Monroe County, complete with hand-drawn eyewitness sketches and tallies of sightings. The stories ran largely as curiosities, amusements for the reading public, until Gemini 5 was launched and President Lyndon Baines Johnson announced an end to the draft deferment for newly married men, and the Monroe Monster was largely forgotten, except by those who had actually seen something they could not explain. In the case of Christine Van Acker and her mother, Ruth Owens, whatever reached in through the car window left an indelible mark on them both. They did not ask to be assaulted by a monster that night, nor were they prepared for the social price they would have to pay for speaking up. The question is, why did they have to pay a price at all? And when another monster emerges in Monroe, as it allegedly has in May of 2025, will things be any different?